school was extremely fortunate to have a very special guest. Assembly member Mr. O'Donnell spoke to 2nd through 5th grade students of PS 84.
After he finished speaking, we were lucky enough to get an interview with him. We asked him a few questions. He had some very interesting answers. Let's go check them out. I'm Isabel, and this is Lola with Assembly Member O'Donnell. I understand that you have an annual community reading project. Can you tell us a little about that?
I sure will. For the last 10 years, I go into the local schools and encourage kids to read. And what we do is we give out booklets that allow them to see what books we suggest. We have a theme. This year's theme is about bullying. And we're trying to get kids to read books about trying to find ways to stop bullying in the schools. And the good thing about the challenge is that you only have to read one book, but you could read a lot. As you saw, one of your classmates read 17 last year. That's a lot of books. And anybody who participates gets to come to one of the libraries where we'll have a little program and we'll have someone read to you, and we'll give you a tote bag and a certificate from me, as well as a copy of a book.
So, how did it get started?
It got started because when I was newly elected, somebody said to me, "What should we do in the schools?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "What did you do as a kid that was good for you?" And I said, "My mom brought me to the library to read books." And so we said, how can we encourage kids to get them to read? And that's how it started.
That's very interesting.
Okay, so I read that you are preserving the architecture in Morningside Heights.
I'm trying, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. Here in New York, we have a lot of old buildings that are very special and need to be protected. And what happens is we have something called historic districts, which are neighborhoods that say that because they're so special, they need to be preserved. We have them all over the city. Some are in Soho, Tribeca, those are places. Well, here in Morningside Heights, all the buildings in Morningside Heights were built between 1900 and 1920. And they were all built by famous, very noted Beaux-Arts architects. And none of them are currently protected. So my idea is to create a historic district, which would mean you can't tear those buildings down and you can't alter them on the outside. You can fix them up on the inside, but the outside has to stay the same so that the neighborhood will continue to feel like the neighborhood feels 100 years from now. So when little kids like you are in this school 100 years from now, they get to still see that Morningside Heights is a beautiful neighborhood that we preserved by making it a historic district.
Why is it important to preserve these buildings?
Because otherwise someone can come in and tear them down. And they can take down a beautiful building that has 4 stories and beautiful ornate architecture and beautiful, beautiful styling and rip it down and put up a 40-story glass tower. That would be very unfortunate. It would.
So, I heard when you were talking before, you were talking about how you passed the gay rights law,
right?
Gay marriage law. After that law passed, did you ever feel like anybody didn't vote for a law just because you passed that law, even if they believed that that was a good law to pass or a good bill?
That's a wonderful question. Many of my colleagues voted no just because they were afraid. They were afraid that somebody wouldn't like it. And so even though I tried to convince them that it was the right thing to do and that if I got married, nobody would be harmed, they didn't really, that wasn't enough to convince them to vote yes because they were afraid. And you know, I met President Obama last year for the first time, and when I met him, I told him that I had passed the marriage bill and that when I got married, not a single straight person was harmed. And he laughed very, very hard. So I have a wonderful picture in my office of me with President Obama laughing hysterically about the fact that when I got married, nothing bad happened to anyone. So I had to convince my colleagues of that. Many of them I did, but some of them felt that they would vote yes, but they were just afraid.
Do you think that it was wrong that they were afraid, or do you understand that they had worries?
I understand that they had worries, but I think that our job is to overcome being afraid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When you were talking to the school, you said that you passed over 2,000 bills. What was the first bill that passed?
The first bill that I passed was a very good bill, as a matter of fact. It was a bill that said that when someone is in a court getting an order of protection, which is a piece of paper that says that you should stay away from someone if you're having a fight with them, that the judge has to ask whether or not they have a gun. So that bill would be very important, because if somebody is in a fight with somebody and they have a gun at home, I think the judge should know that before they issue an order of protection. So my bill required the judge to ask, do you have a gun, before they issue an order of protection. That was my first ever bill, was passed in 2003.
That sounds like a very good bill.
Thank you.
You probably get this question a lot, but what was it like growing up with Rosie O'Donnell as your sister?
Well, she's my little sister, so people say I look like her, and I tell them no, she looks like me, because it was my face first, okay? So she's always was very funny and very competitive. So there are a lot of people who are famous who come from famous families. We didn't come from a famous family. Maybe one of you will grow up and be famous. Who knows? You don't know. So we was a fairly ordinary in that sense. We had a lot of responsibilities. My mother died when I was a child, and so we all had to learn how to cook and clean and do things that other kids didn't do. But it wasn't until we were older that she was famous, and now she's very famous and very rich.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very
What a
welcome.
great
It's a
interview.
pleasure.
Congratulations to Nari for winning the reading challenge.
I'm Lola.
And I'm Isabel. And see you next time on The Luncheon.